Hi, I'm Matt, co-founder and creator of ProMode.ai. We're going to take a look at the entire application today. So if you're watching this video from the very beginning, I encourage you to take a look at the description of this video, and I'll highlight all of the chapters so that you can jump ahead if you're just trying to troubleshoot something or wondering how to take a certain action inside the app. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. All right. So first off, this is your overview page. So every time you log in, you will land here. You'll see the different platforms that you have integrated into ProMode, and you'll see a feed of recent activities. The first thing I'd like you to take a look at in the application is up here. This is your notifications feed. And when you click see all notifications, you actually see a unique ID and action taken in the entire app. So everything is timestamped. Everything has a unique identifier in it. And so you can see full transparency, chain of custody, how every single action with a time and date stamp that's been taken inside of ProMode. And right now you're seeing ProMode Dev. This will actually be a user ID that you'll see here when you're looking through this. So if you ever want to know what happened or any changes that have been made in the app, and you want to do a deep dive and follow that chain of custody, you can do so right here in your notifications. The next thing that we're going to take a look at is your fingerprint profile. The fingerprint profile is the absolute core of ProMode's technology. What ProMode does is it provides a platform for you to create your own context engineering. Context engineering is a term used for AI, and it basically tells a model how you would like it for it to communicate. So ProMode assembles all of the context that you would need to use any sort of AI workflows for the purposes of marketing. The first fingerprint profile, we're going to look at your high-level site profile here. This has all of the nuts and bolts information like your company name, your domain, as well as description, mission, values, strategic advantages. This bit of information is context that is used for every single run of every single AI action inside of ProMode. This is like the elevator pitch for your company. Moving down the page, we have your SEO strategy, which contains keywords and different linking strategies, both internal to your own domain and backlinks to authoritative sources. And then lastly, we have your brand and voice. So ProMode uses semantic analysis. So instead of saying in a prompt, write in a friendly and professional tone, we actually quantify these things. Ensures maximal accuracy anytime something is written on behalf of your company by any of ProMode's agents or large language models. So brand and voice is broken down into 5 categories: tone, humor, emotion, informational writing, and stylistic devices. This is also a piece of context that is sent with every single AI action that occurs inside of ProMode. You'll see here there are some numbers associated with the features under each of these top level categories. These numbers are from 0 to 1, so you can think of these like a percentage. So in the case of ProMode, our formality percentage of writing is 28%. And our directness is 92%. And then each of these examples here correspond to the feature from above. The instructions here, these are writing instructions. And you can also include do's and do nots in these instructions. Now, let's say that I wanted to edit anything in here. all I would do is just click Edit Site Profile, and you see that now I can edit all of these fields. If you see a list of things here, you can delete that. And then let's say that you wanted to add something new in here, you can do that as well and just click the plus button. Same thing here. If you want to turn up your formality, for example, you would just change that value, and then you would click Save Changes, and all those would be saved. Now, this is our actual ProMode portal, so I'm not going to save those changes. I'm going to click Cancel. But again, your site profile is the core of everything. Anytime that one of ProMode's AI pipelines or agents writes anything for your website, it will be pulling in this information from your SEO strategy. And then again, anytime ProMode writes anything, it will be pulling from your site information here, description, mission, values, and strategic advantages, as well as your brand and voice here. So give this a thorough review, make all of the edits that you want, and get things tuned exactly how you want. Now, moving on to the next Fingerprint Profile category, I'm going to jump down to audiences. So there are two main categories that are used to create strategy, to create content, to create campaigns. Those two main categories are audiences and your products and services. When you click on the audiences under the Fingerprint Profile navigation, you'll see a list of every audience that you are targeting with your marketing. You can click into any one of these and you can see how the messaging for this particular audience is built. So in this case, we have a marketing director as a target audience and a brief summary, and then industries that this marketing director might work in. And then you've got different pain points of the audience, and that's derived through social listening and deep research. And then corresponding to those pain points for that audience, you have unique solutions that your company provides to those pain points. And under here, under instructions, these are any overriding instructions that you would like to give your models to speak to this particular audience. And then additionally, every Fingerprint Profile entry has its own gallery associated with it. And this makes media management much easier down the road. And so I can click on this and I can associate up to 30 images from my gallery with this particular Fingerprint Profile. We're going to click over into the products and services profile category. And here you'll see a list of all the products and services that you sell. Can edit any of these in the same way that you're able to edit anything inside of your Fingerprint Profile. Additionally, you can attach images to a Fingerprint Profile gallery, save that, and now you have all of those edits in here. Now, there are a couple of other Fingerprint Profiles we want to take a look at. One of those is industries. So industry profiles are used for things like thought leadership or technical writing. If you are working in an industry where keeping up with the latest trends, the latest technologies, just different emerging best practices, this is a great place to have an industry profile because you can use that to generate content specific to that industry. This can be your industry that you work in, or this can also be industries that your customers are working in. So if you want to create content that shows you as a subject matter expert in your customers' industries, this would be a great way to do that, is by having these industry profiles. Inside of our industry profiles, you can add trends, you can add different language. So language, this field is related to what is the insider terminology? How do people speak about these things? You want to have some lingo in here that maybe you don't want to use it in like your day-to-day marketing content, but when you are speaking to this particular industry, you definitely want to use language that they're familiar with. In here, you've got some different trade publications. This might be academic journals. These are just trusted sources of information. And we'll get to some ways that these publications are used further down the line, as well as experts in the field. So you can add any expert names in here as well. And just like all your fingerprint profiles, you can add images to those. Case studies. So if you have any case studies, you can send us PDFs of case studies. You can send us links to it when we initially build your fingerprint profile. Any case studies that you have publicly available, in addition to any testimonials that are publicly available, these can be added. But if you'd like us to assemble some case studies in here, then just let us know and we'll get these added. Now let's take a look at research. So research is academic works, preprint, literature reviews. These can be medical journals. These can be coming from all kinds of sources. Even if your company has maybe conducted your own research, this can be added in here as well. So similar to industries, research is used for technical writing. It's used for thought leadership. If you are a company that works in a highly regulated industry, and for example, you might have FDA clearance requirements, or you need to cite any claims, research is where that is done. So let's take a look at a research profile. So every research profile contains multiple sources. So your research profiles are organized by topic, and then each topic can have multiple sources that are contributing to it. So in this case, we have a research profile that is called In Context Learning. There's a summary of everything that was found through this research. And then here we have different facts, statistics, quotes, snippets from the various studies that went into this. And then you can see here that every bit of research is cited. And then if you have specific ways that this research needs to be used, you can just indicate those in the instructions. So that wraps up, an overview of your fingerprint profile. This is one of the most important things in the entire app. So I would encourage you to get familiar with all of these and be sure to give them a look. It'll take a while at the very beginning, but what you're really doing is you're building context for just sustainable workflow improvements over time. So be sure to take the time at the beginning of launching ProMode to read through these, review them. If you have compliance departments that you work with as a part of your marketing activities, by all means, have them give this a thorough review before you begin to generate content from it. Okay, now let's move on to talk about your content review. So content review is where all of the content that you generate inside of ProMode will appear. There are 3 columns. The first column is awaiting approval. Anytime you generate new content in ProMode, it will begin to stream into your content review portal, and it will first show up here in the awaiting approval column. You can click into any piece of content by hovering over it, clicking the view icon, and in here you can make all of the edits that you would make otherwise. You can add emojis by using this emoji here. You can add hashtags or delete the suggested hashtags here, as well as adding multiple images onto the post, like so. After you make your edits to a piece of content, you can choose to schedule that content directly from here, from within the content card. And you just find the date you want, select the time, at AM or PM, click OK, and then click Save. Once you have saved a piece of content to publish, if it's not yet in the scheduled column, you can just simply hover over it and click Approve. Now, let's say that in your organization, there are several layers of approval that need to occur for a piece of content. I mentioned here, when content is first created, it will appear here in the awaiting approval column. And let's say that you have somebody at your organization that does the first pass on the content. So that might be somebody who selects the images, maybe makes some line breaks in here, maybe adds the emojis. They save that, and then they move that over into the need revisions column. There's no action that occurs in the need revisions column. This is just for your internal organization. So let's say that the next person logs into ProMode and their job is to give final approval and schedule the content. So actually build the dates that everything is scheduled. You can hover over a card, click on the reschedule button, and here you'll see the same date and time picker appear. And you can confirm that, and then you can click approve. And now that is in my scheduled column. Now, let's say that a piece of content comes through that you don't want to use. Maybe you accidentally created it. You don't like the content inside of it. You can just simply hover over that content card, click reject, provide feedback if you would like to train your model more, or you can click skip feedback. And then if you have provided feedback, you can click submit. Once you have scheduled a piece of content, you've clicked the approve. That content will now appear in your content calendar. So here's our fully populated content calendar. And so if you prefer this view, you can look at all of your approved content here, and then just simply click into any one piece of content, and you can make the edits if the scheduled date has not yet passed. Now let's talk about troubleshooting your content review feed. By default, ProMode only displays content that is scheduled for, whether it is approved in your scheduled column. If the scheduled on date is any time in the next 30 days, it will appear in this feed here. If you had created some content and the date that it was scheduled for was before today, you might not be able to find the content with the default view. So if you ever can't find any piece of content that you knew was there at one point, the likely scenario is that scheduled date has already passed. That's okay. You can simply click on the filter button here, and on start date, you can move back to when that content was initially created. You click save, and then all of that content that was scheduled for an earlier date will appear here. Furthermore, you can filter by platform, and you can filter by the type of content that was created. Similarly, let's say you created content and you schedule that for more than a month into the future, but you want to review that now. Just simply click on the end date, move the date forward, click save, and then that content will appear. And at any point, you can just reset the default filters, click refresh, and you will return to the default view. You can also change the order of your content. So you can either have the date ascending or descending here. So if a piece of content is scheduled for a platform, it has been approved, and it is in the scheduled column, on that date and time, that content will be sent to that particular social platform. Once it has been sent to that social platform, to your website, or to your email provider, ProMode will get a ping back to confirm that that content did in fact make it to that platform. So anytime that content is accepted by the platform, once it's sent from ProMode, that will appear here in your content library. So there's no actions that can be taken here. This is just confirmation that all of this content has gone to the intended platform. So in this instance, we know that on Friday, September 5th, that this Instagram post did make it to Instagram. Next, let's move on to your media gallery. So just like your content review feed, your media gallery is also time-stamped. So there is depending upon when the media was added, when is how it will appear in your default view. So if you want to take a look at your entire library, then what I would do is just go ahead and set the start date for that media back since before you started ProMode. Click Save, and then that content will appear. Now, when you add new media by clicking Add an Item, you can either choose if you've got a public URL. So if this media is in a public drive, for example, or you have a URL to the media file from your website, you can add that media URL here. Similarly, if you have media URLs to a stock image, and that is a public URL, then you can add that URL here. Again, you'll know if it's a public URL if when you put it into the media URL field here, it will populate. So let me just do an example of this. So I know for sure that this is a public URL. So if I click Add an Item and I add that URL here, you'll see that there is a preview of that image. We always recommend that you add a description. So we're going to say this is orange wall with word strategy. I can also add keywords here. So strategy, wall, office. And then I can just add that item. And now we see that that item is in my gallery. Now let's say that you wanted to upload something from your computer. Simply click File Upload. You can browse your desktop, and you see here that now I have that file as a preview as a result of uploading it from my computer. Similarly, I can add a description here, and we'll get to why that's important later. And then I can add that item. Now, there's something you see here. You see platform compatibility. So you see the 4 social platforms. Every social platform has compatibility requirements and preferred aspect ratios. If you see, let's go through this exercise again. Here we go. So you'll see that right here, I've got a yellow warning over Instagram. And that is only because the dimensions of this image exceed what Instagram will allow. That's okay. If you see the yellow warning like this, when you click Save, this image for Instagram will be resized when you save it, and it will just reduce the width from its current 1600 pixels to Instagram's required 1400 pixels. Similarly, if you would like to make these changes for platform compatibility, if you would like to do those manually, so let's say you would like to keep the same symmetry of this image, you can click Edit Image, and here you can crop the image exactly how you would want it to appear. And you see the preview down here is showing you how the image is being cropped and will be used by the social platform. You can click on Set Optimal Aspect Ratio, and that will set the optimal aspect ratio for that particular platform. And you can click Save Cropped Image. Our recommendation, to maximize your productivity and your workflow, our recommendation is to use a aspect ratio that is accepted by all platforms without any additional auto cropping. That aspect ratio is 1:1. So you see here, I've got 1400 by 1400. That is equal aspect ratio on all sides. Let's talk about video. You can also upload video to ProMode, and you'll see we have these same warnings here for platform compatibility. ProMode does accept MP4 files. That is the file type that is preferred by all of the platforms, and as well as the aspect ratio. So as you can see here, we have warnings on frame rate requirements and audio requirements for these platforms. But again, anytime you see this yellow warning, that's okay. It will autocorrect on saving it. ProMode will correct that file. Once you publish content with once you publish content that contains a piece of media, you'll see that these boxes will start to be checked. So if we used this on Instagram, we would see that the Instagram use has been checked. If you'd like to prevent any piece of media from being used on a particular platform, you can actually go in and manually check these and save that item. And then it will take that item out of rotation for those platforms for a period of 30 days. You can view your media gallery by the date that it was added, starting at the newest or the oldest, or also by the name of the file. So you see here, I've got organized by name. I can make those edits, or I can organize it by when it was added. And again, if there's an image in here that you don't see, you can always filter by whether it was approved, pending approval, if it's already been used in content, as well as the date that you added it. You can set those filters. Now, by and large, if you use ProMode for long enough, you know that there are a lot of media requirements. You're going to have a lot of images, a lot of videos to sift through. So when we initially populate your media gallery, we do that in bulk, and we add these descriptions and these keywords to each media item. That is so you can use this search. So I type in strategy, and you see here, I've got all of my images that either contain a description or a keyword that contains the word strategy. So if I type in graph, you can see here, I've got anything that contains the search term graph to it. And you can also tab through everything and see everything that contains that search term on multiple pages. Now, what if you want to delete something from your library? There's a little ellipses right here. You can click that, click delete. We'll find the duplicate I just made. Okay, so now you see we've got two duplicates here. I'm going to delete one of those. It's going to ask me to confirm, and I just simply click delete. Now let's talk about all of the ways that you can generate content from ProMode. So the first way that you can get content out of ProMode is through a status update. So I can click status update. It's going to ask me what I would like to create today. You have two options. When I click status update, what this will generate is one piece of content on every platform that I have connected. So here I can just add details about something that I have upcoming. So let's use a webinar as an example here. Okay, so I've got an upcoming webinar about context engineering for professional marketers. It is going to be on September 23rd from noon to 3 Central Time. So notice I just had to put the details in here. This is the beauty of context engineering and the fingerprint profile, is that we just need the nuts and bolts information of anything. You don't need to write a prompt. You don't need to do any of that. All of the context is pre-built. And so if you've got a registration link here, you can add that here as a call to action. And then I'm going to select an image for this announcement. Here, I'm given an option to choose the platforms that this message goes out on. And so I can choose anything. And you'll notice you must have the platform connected to ProMode or it will not generate the content for that particular announcement. So here I'm going to select all of my social platforms. I'm going to go to next, and then I'm going to decide when do I want to schedule all of those posts. So I'm going to schedule those for September 10th. And I have the option to add another status update. So let's say I've got also another webinar. Let's do webinar Gen AI images for professional market. October 13th, 1 to 3 Central Time. Add my call to action, find an image, select my platforms again, and schedule that for, let's go a little bit earlier than that. Okay. There we go. And so again, I can add up to 5 status updates in this particular session. But I only had 2 things to announce. So I'm going to go ahead and click skip. And now this is going to begin generating that content. Let's take a look at the other type of status update that we can do. So I'm going to add a status update. Here we had a status update that's the same message on all your platforms. But now let's choose one-off content. So I get to pick and choose the type of content that I want for each platform. Here you're given a choice between social posts, email content, and web content. Now, let's go ahead and do email content. You're going to be given a choice of an email template here, which you will select. And I'm just going to go ahead and select my default email template here. And for this, I'm going to say, let's do this. We're going to say, announce the upcoming webinar on context engineering for professional marketer. /webinar and that. And again, we'll go ahead and choose media from our gallery. Choose we want to schedule this particular email. And then again, so now I've got, if we look back, I got one piece of email content announcing my webinar. Now I have the option to add another. I'm going to go ahead and add another piece of one-off content. In this case, let's go ahead and create some web content. Again, you'll be given an option to choose a design format here. And here we're going to say discuss the importance of context engineering. Frustrated AI. So here I've got an option for CTA. So I can say, learn more at our upcoming webinar. So I'll put the link there. And let's add some more sections to this web piece. So highlight some limitations of AI wrappers, showing why context engineering is the future of enterprise AI usage, especially in marketing. Let's add one more section here. Context engineering and consistency, particularly for industries that are highly regulated or technical. All right, so now I've got 3 sections, 3 main ideas that I want to cover in this piece of web content. I'll go to next, and I'm going to let's select 3 images for this web piece, one of which will become the featured image. I'll click next, and the date that I want this piece of web content to schedule. I can continue to get one-off content like this, but in this case, I feel good with the one email and the one web piece. So I'm going to go ahead and skip. And now you'll see that that content is being generated based off of those status updates. And now that we're back over here in the content review feed, we see that the content that I just created with my 2 status updates has populated here. And now I can begin to go through the process of viewing that content. And I can, let's say, I don't want that in there. Let's say I want a line break. So I can do all my just formatting here. All right, there we go. That post looks good. I can swap out my image. I can change the schedule date of this. I'm just going to go ahead and save that. Now, if somebody else had to give approval on this, I'm just going to drag that over here. I'm going to let them know, hey, this is ready for your review. And then they can come in and make final edits and approval. For now, let's just delete all of this. So now we've just seen how to submit status updates. Let's go here. Here, what we see is a summary of every status update that has been submitted in this particular ProMode instance. So I can click in to any one of these and I can see the content that was submitted. So here's the text that I put in here. We can see the media that I added, and then we can see the second status update that I created. Another cool thing that you can do with status updates is you can generate a newsletter from them. So without going through the status update, let's say in this case, I have, here is, oh, that was the one I used for email. Let's go. Okay, here are the social posts where I announced this particular webinar. So we've got 2 webinars that we announced. And now let's say that you've got some email lists that they might want to also know about these webinars. What you can do is you can go to your status update table of the past updates that you've submitted. You can click Create Newsletter. You select your email template from here, and then you can just highlight any past update that you've submitted, and you then can click Create Newsletter. And then that newsletter will be created based off of the template that you selected. That's a cool feature for folks who generally would send a newsletter about maybe not targeted at a specific list, maybe not with the purpose of lead conversion, but just sort of a wrap up. Hey, here are the things that we've been up to this month. So that you can go through the month, submit your status updates, announcing things that you have upcoming, and then you can go here and just create a newsletter based off of these past status updates. So that is your status update table. And you can also click the Add Status button here. So we've gone over submitting a status update where you would get multiple platforms all related to the same topic. You can also get one-off pieces of content through the status update. So for those of you that like to create just one-off blogs about a topic that might not fit into an overall content theme, the status update is a great way to do that. If you want to wish somebody happy work anniversary or welcome a new employee to the team, these are all great use cases for status updates. Now let's talk about the other way that ProMode creates content, and that is through strategies. So if a status update is generally used to create really specific topical content about an event, maybe some new announcement in your company, a new product line that you're releasing, a new territory that you're getting into, all great stuff for status updates. Strategy content is like working with jet fuel. So with a strategy, now we're actually getting into using our other fingerprint profiles. So let's talk about how a strategy works. I'm going to click Add Strategy. And then in my strategy focus, this is going to be just the main idea that I want to talk. So in my case, I'm going to talk about let's do educational content about context engineering for professional marketers. Why it's a must-have for marketers who know what they want, have refined taste, and demand accuracy. Highlight the limitation. Okay, highlight the limitations of prompting and AI wrappers for scaling across technical industries and multiple departments. Okay. So this is just the high level filter that I want to talk about. So you don't need to load up a ton of context in here, but this is just generally where do I want this messaging to be aimed at. And for me, this is going to be educational about context engineering. Eventually, this strategy will become content. So what you can do is you can also associate images. So we've got some great suggestions here. All right. So you can have up to 30 images in this. So you can think about a strategy as something that is more evergreen. This is a combination of just all of the things that your company does and for whom. So in this instance, I'm going to, now that I've got my strategy focus, I've added some images that represent this concept well, I'm going to go down and take a look at my audiences. So in this case, we're talking about context engineering for professional marketers. So I'm going to go down to my audiences and I'm going to identify, let's go chief marketing officer and perhaps a fractional CMO. So we've got fractional CMO, we've got chief marketing officer, and then let's maybe go ahead and do marketing agency. Okay. And then for products and services, well, we only sell one, so I'm going to select that. And then, as we mentioned before, we have there are two fingerprint profiles, industries and research, that are used for thought leadership. So by including either industries or research, you are including more technical information into this particular model. So if you want to have it be more technical, let's go ahead and pull in some AI and compute curves. I think that's a really good research category for this particular topic. And so once I've assembled these, again, you can create as many strategies as you want. So I would encourage you, don't feel as though you need to select every single audience. The message just gets watered down. I would instead encourage you to create more strategies instead of trying to hit every single thing with every single strategy. And we'll talk about some use cases here in a minute for how you might use these. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to generate this strategy. Now, what's happening here, ProMode's agents and large language models took your high level focus, the thing that I typed in there. And what it did is it retuned it pulled information from all of those other fingerprint profiles, retuned that information for what you put into that focus box, and then created an entirely new model that you can use. So when you see this strategy here, what you see in the generated strategy, this is all of the new context that was created through your focus and your inclusion of those other fingerprint profiles. So this is entirely unique information that was created by filtering your focus and then using all of those other fingerprint profiles as source data. The other fingerprint profiles that you use to create this particular strategy remain attached to the strategy. And so what you're looking at here is instructions on how this particular model. So we have the name of our model is Context Engineering, the new non-negotiable for serious marketers. So I've got all of those other fingerprint profiles attached to this. And what I'm looking at now is the new context that was created as a result of the focus that I put in there. So this is almost like building a mini language model that you can use for all kinds of things. So I would encourage you, give this a thorough review. Just like everything, you can add examples, you can delete examples. So give this a thorough review. This is like your own little mini language model that you are using for future content. What I'm going to do, let's say that I've already reviewed all of this. I've made the edits that I want. I'm going to click Approve and Close. And so here I've got the name of that strategy. And let's talk about some things that we can do. First thing we can do, let's say that I wanted to, let's go use case of this particular strategy. I'm going to have this just be brand awareness. And so this is going to be from me. I'm going to say September 2025 brand awareness. And I'm going to, I can change who it's for, but I'm just going to save those changes. Now, okay, so I've got this new model that I just built, this brand awareness. Context engineering is the non-negotiable. One thing that I can do with this is I can fully populate my content calendar with one of these strategies. So let's say next month, I want to talk about context engineering as a non-negotiable on all of our social platforms. So I'm going to then create, we're going to go 4 posts per platform. So just handling my basic social media calendar here. And I want this to start on October 1st. And I can click Generate Posts. And then I will have, and actually, let's just do this for real. I need to do this anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to schedule 2 posts per platform starting in October. I'm just going to click Generate Posts. And so now I'm kicked out over here to my content review feed. But let's go back to that strategy here. And then let's say I want to use this. I want to use this other strategy for the rest of October's content calendar. So again, I'm going to have my start date be October 2nd. And I'm going to do 2 posts per platform. And I click Generate Posts. So now I just created, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8. So 16 pieces of content. Each of those pieces of content will be scheduled twice per week, only on weekdays, and it will optimize that scheduling time between morning and evening. So now I've got 16 pieces of social content that will populate October's content calendar. Let's talk about some other things that we can do with a strategy. So let's go ahead and take the one strategy that I just created. And again, I want you to think about this as if it's its own language model that is tuned to your focus point. It's retrieving context from your other fingerprint profiles. And so if we look down here, our audiences are chief marketing officers, fractional chief marketing officers, and marketing agencies. So chances are you probably have an email management service. So something that sends out your lead nurture emails, things like that. And I'm guessing that your lists are probably segmented similarly to your audiences. So something else I can do is I can go to my strategies. I can click my generate content icon here. And now let's say I wanted to create a drip campaign, an email campaign to those audiences that I've got in there. So I've got a list that's all chief marketing officers, fractional chief marketing officers. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to, let's create a nice little 3 email sequence to these folks. So I went down here to newsletter. I clicked 3. And then that model that I just created, there's a narrative inside of that strategy. Now ProMode will break that narrative into 3 chunks and create a piece of email marketing content with that narrative broken into 3 steps. And I'm going to want this campaign to start on October 1st. And so I'm going to go ahead and click generate post. And then I will have 3 email sequence that is scheduled every week from that strategy model that I just built. And you can see here we have also have our social content coming through from that strategy scheduled for our October content. Let's go back over to strategies. Now let's say, I'm going to go ahead and let's edit this strategy. So at first, this was kind of geared towards kind of more general brand awareness content, maybe a little bit of education about context engineering. But I'm thinking maybe we make this general idea a little bit more technical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter in a new strategy focus. And so for this particular strategy focus, I'm going to say highly technical exploration of context engineering versus prompt-based chat LLMs and AI wrap. So now we're going to get highly technical. So now I want to filter through the highly technical. And instead of marketers, I might let's target CEOs for this one, and then maybe like owners. Okay, we want to create some thought leadership here. And so what I'm going to do is for the industries that I want to create some thought leadership content in, I think that healthcare would be a great one. And let's find another one. And finance and insurance. And I'm going to say, let's do this, especially for highly regulated industries. And so what I did was I've got CEOs and owners, and I went ahead and selected 2 industries that we work with who are generally under the most regulatory scrutiny of them all. And because I want this to be highly technical, I think what I'm going to do is include some research as well. So I'm going to include these 3 research topics. I'm going to go ahead and click regenerate strategy. All right. Now we have my new strategy. So I created a variant on the original strategy. So not only did when I created my first strategy, I created a brand new content and messaging filtered through my focus input. And then here I took what I created there and then created another variant on that to make that basic messaging more technical for a different audience. And in my case, I did that because I had different plans for what I want to do with this particular more technical content. So again, let's just say that I went ahead and I read through all of this information. I edited, and I like this strategy. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And so now you see I've got that variation of this. Let's go ahead and rename it. And we're going to say October 2025 technical. So now I'll be able to remember that. And so with the more technical information, here's what I want to do with that is I want to start building out a library of highly technical information for those industries on my website. So what I've done is I've chosen 3 pieces of web content to create from that new model that I just created. So this is going to be evergreen, highly technical, highly searchable content geared towards those audiences with the subject of context engineering. So I'm going to select the start date that I want to start publishing that content on my website. I've selected 3 under the blog category. I'm going to click generate posts. And now that content is now being created. Okay, so now that you're familiar with building a strategy, let's talk about all the use cases that you could have for creating a strategy. Let's do this one. So we're going to say, let's stick with the context engineering theme. Context engineering is the critical bridge between powerful AI and enterprise adopt. Okay, so we are wanting to position ourselves, we're wanting to educate our audience about context engineering. We know that most folks have used AI at this point, but are probably questioning if this can actually be used in a persistent and accurate way across an enterprise organization. So I'm going to keep that as my strategy focus. Let's, like we always do, let's go ahead and attach some imagery to our strategy. This will save us a ton of time down the road. So I'm going to add all of the images that I would be okay with for this particular strategy. And now in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to use strategy model building as a way to split test. So in this instance, what I'm going to do is for my audiences, I'm going to keep the same audience as chief marketing officer. But in this particular test, what I want to do is I want to see what is most important to this chief marketing officer. So I want to test this messaging based upon the 3 pillars of ProMode's deliverables. So that would be email, web content, and social content. So I'm going to create a strategy that has this particular filter for this audience related to this particular aspect of our offering. I'm not going to include anything else. We're not really doing thought leadership here. I just want to do some message testing and see what aspects of our product and service lands with the chief marketing officer. So I'm going to go ahead and, before I do this, I'm going to go ahead and copy what I put in the focus, and I'm going to generate that strategy. Okay, so now we have our strategy. I'm going to go ahead and approve this. And let's go ahead and for organization, I'm going to just label this A/B test CMO. And what did I put in there? Did I put social? I can't remember now. Okay, so let's go ahead and save those changes. And then let's go ahead and do another strategy. I'm going to put the same focus in here. Again, I'm going to add all the same images, keep with the same audience. And in this instance, I'm going to see if email marketing, I want to know, is email marketing going to be the most resonant aspect of our offering for this particular audience? And I'm going to generate that strategy. I'm going to go ahead and label this now. A/B test, email marketing. I'm going to approve and close that. And then we have my second strategy that I just created here. So now what I can do is, if let's say that I wanted to test this particular messaging on 3 email campaigns, I could test that messaging here, take a look at open rates for that one, and then do the same thing here. Oops. And then do the same thing here. Send out 3 newsletters. I could do these a month apart from one another. I could generate those emails and see how that messaging lands. Another use case for this, let's say you were thinking about doing a paid ad strategy and you want to make sure that you really cover your bases as far as ad creative is concerned. In this instance, I can go ahead and run a test side by side. And I can do, let's say, starting on October 1st, I'm going to test this messaging on social, generate that content. And then I'm going to come and go to my other strategy, and I'm going to set this test to be a month after that, and I can test this. And so with this, I can keep an eye on engagement metrics. And if one particular strategy tends to be higher performing than the other, the messaging tends to be higher performing. A cool thing that I could do is I could actually go in here and you can see the entire narrative of the model, the high level narrative that I created contains examples. It contains writing instructions. So with these examples, this would be a great place to start when you are thinking through a paid ad strategy creative. Pull from these examples, copy them. You could send these to your pay-per-click agency or whomever's putting these ads together for you. But that's another use case for strategy. So, wrapping up the discussion around strategies, you can think of strategies are like branches of your ProMode model. So you can, every time you put something into that focus box, an entirely new model is built. And that model has new content in it that did not previously exist. And because with ProMode, we use AI as more of a computer instead of like a creative content generator. When these models are built, it is just computing all of the additional information that you have inside of your fingerprint profile to generate entirely new branches of messaging that you can use. And again, because ProMode uses context engineering, you know that in each of these new models, new messaging models that are built, because you have carefully reviewed these audiences and the industries, you know the source material that is being used. ProMode is the building blocks for you providing your own source material to create these unlimited variants of messaging and entirely new language models that you can use for generating. So, we've covered all of the highlights of ProMode. Now let's just talk about some nuts and bolts stuff. So let's say you need to change your payment method. Add a new credit card. Right here under Site Profile, you can go to Update Payment Method. If you wanted to check which platforms are connected, you can see the connected platforms right here. You can, again, always make all of these edits here. And let's go through some of the most common troubleshooting things that folks run into. Number one, if something isn't showing up in your content review feed, one of two things probably happen. Either the schedule date is outside of the default filters, which is today and 30 days into the future, in which case you can extend the end date or you can bump back the start date of that content. Another reason why you might not be seeing content show up in your content review feed is because you do not have that platform actually connected here. So if you don't see it connected here, it will not generate content either from a status update or from a strategy. Let's say that you submit a status update and you don't see that content coming back. If you come over here, as you can see, all of these summaries are populated. If for some reason your browser timed out or some issue happened while the AI was generating that content, you'll see that the summary is not populated here. So in that case, if you do not see a summary populated here, and it has, it's been more than 2 or 3 minutes where that content should have been returned, there's probably a browser timeout or some sort of caching issue. In which case, if there's no summary, you can go through here and you can see everything that you put into this particular status update. If that's the case, what you can do is you can just copy your original input that you had for that status update. That's always saved. So you can copy the input from your original status update and just simply go to submit a new status update with all the same selections and just simply paste what you put in there before. Another common thing that we see is when content is pushed to a social platform and the image crops in a weird way. That will be caused by an incompatible aspect ratio for a particular platform. So if you have an image, some platforms prefer landscape, others prefer square, others prefer a portrait orientation. So if you notice on one platform, the image looks a little funky, but it looks good on others, it's the compatibility issue that we're running into. For this, our recommendation is to have all of your media be 1-to-1 aspect ratio. So like a perfect square. It's worth going through the extra work of either cropping the image here in ProMode or pre-cropping it to be a 1-to-1 aspect ratio prior to importing into ProMode. And that way you can go through, as you saw me creating all of my various strategies over here, it just makes it so much faster to go through and to be able to just rapid select images without really any consideration for aspect ratio. You know that they're all going to work for every platform. They're not going to you don't have to rely on auto cropping in a way that you don't like. Maybe top of somebody's head gets cut off, something along those lines. And then lastly, let's say that you don't like the content coming out of here. Just routinely, maybe there's some language or some punctuation you don't like or something that you wish was in there. Again, this is the beauty of context engineering. So we at ProMode, we use AI as computation. So ProMode doesn't have any instructions on how to write or any instructions on any of that. It does not use anything that is not found somewhere in your fingerprint profile. So if you don't like the voice that it's writing with, you have full control over that here in your Brandon voice. If you want to rank for new SEO keywords, again, you've got full control over that here. If you don't like the way that the content is speaking to a particular audience, you can control all of that here. So think of ProMode like the boxes or the buckets that all of this context is held within, and you have full control to review and edit and change the contents of those. Yeah, and that concludes a full walkthrough of ProMode's app. And if you have any questions, just reach out to us, team@ProMode.ai. If you have a bulk images, a bunch of images that you want to import into your gallery, you don't want to have to write the descriptions for all of them, we have programs that we can run to do that for you. Reach out to us. If there are new fingerprint profiles you want to add. So let's say you're breaking into a new vertical and you want to add some audience profiles for that. Send us some reference material. We'll process it so that it's compatible with your existing fingerprint profile. And we can have new profiles added within about a day of you sending us reference materials. Yeah, thanks for watching. It's great to have you on board.